Every trucker in America negotiates freight the same way, blind. Think about that for a second. You call a broker, they give you a number, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. And that number determines whether you move the load or you don't. You either take it or you leave it. And every driver watching this already knows the routine. You ask the same questions every time. How far is it? Is it heavy? Is it drop and hook? What's the dimensions? Is there detention pan with the load? You're trying to figure out if the load actually makes sense. But there's one number you usually never ever hear: what the shipper actually paid. And that's where things start to get really interesting, because the person hauling 45,000 pounds of freight across the United States doesn't know what the freight was actually sold for. Let this sink in for just a minute. The driver doing the work, the driver burning the fuel, the driver taking the risk on the road, the driver taking on the big insurance policy, has no idea what that load originally paid. And what's even more surprising is this: most drivers don't even question it today. It's simply the system they've gotten used to. But when you step back and look at it from the outside, it's actually a very unusual way to run a market. Now, before we go any further, let me be clear about something, because what I'm explaining here is not accusation. This is simply how the freight system works in the United States. Freight moves through brokers, shippers hire brokers, brokers find carriers, and carriers assign the drivers. Everyone in that chain plays a role in moving freight across the country. But when you compare this structure to almost any other industry, something really starts to stand out. Because in most industries, everyone involved understands the value of the transaction. If you buy a house, you know the price of the house. The seller knows the price. The bank knows the price. The realtor knows the price. Everyone involved understands the value of that property. If you go buy a car, you see the sticker price. Maybe you negotiate. You might get a better deal, but everyone still knows the starting value of the vehicle. Every auction works this way. If someone goes to an auction, everyone in the room sees the bids. Everyone knows exactly what that item sells for. You see, that's the entire point of an auction. The price is visible to everybody. Construction works the same way. If someone hires a company to build a building, the general contractor knows the value of the project. Subcontractors know the value of the work they're bidding on. The electrician knows what the electrical portion is worth. The plumber knows what the plumbing portion is worth. Everyone involved understands the financial structure of the job. But trucking works differently. In trucking, the person actually moving the freight, which is the driver, doesn't know what the freight was originally sold for. They just hear the number the broker offers: 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. And then the driver has to decide whether that number makes any sense without knowing the full value of the load. Imagine walking into a car dealership and the dealership refuses to tell you the price of the car. They just say, hey, make us an offer. Anyone that I know would probably walk out. But in trucking, this system has been normal for decades now. Drivers negotiate freight every single day without seeing the full picture. And what's interesting is that many drivers have been doing this for so long now that they don't even question it anymore. It's simply the way the industry has always worked. Now, to be fair, freight moves through a complicated system in the United States. Shippers have freight that needs to be moved. They hire brokers to manage that freight. The brokers connect that freight to the carriers, and the carriers operate the trucks. Drivers move the load. Freight gets delivered. Businesses operate. Everyone in that chain performs a role that keeps the system moving. Brokers provide the access to the freight. The carriers provide the equipment. Drivers move the freight that keeps the entire economy functioning. But the question drivers are really starting to ask now is a simple one. Why can't the driver see the original number? Why can't the person taking on all the risk that's hauling the freight see what the shipper actually paid? And once that question enters the conversation, everything changes, because information changes leverages. And leverage changes how markets behave. If one side of negotiation has more information than the other, that side naturally has an advantage. Right now, in many freight transactions, brokers get to see both sides of that equation. They know what the shipper paid. They know what the carrier is willing to haul the load for. Drivers usually see one number, and then they negotiate from there. And that's exactly why the debate over broker transparency has exploded across the trucking industry, because truckers are tired. Drivers believe they should have access to the original freight rate. We believe that here too for them. They want to see the rate confirmations. They want to know what the shipper actually paid. Others believe the system works fine the way it is. I don't know why. Brokers argue that shipper contracts are private agreements. Okay. They say exposing those numbers could damage business relationships. I don't know so much about that. They say that freight market works because brokers manage the relationships between the shippers and the carriers. Well, before 1980, they were doing the same thing and everything was fine. In many ways, what everyone is saying is true. Brokers right now do play an important role in connecting freight to the trucks. Is it the right way? I'm not too sure about it. But the conversation happening right now isn't really about brokers versus drivers. It's about information. Because once drivers start asking that simple question, what did the shipper actually pay? The entire conversation changes. And that's why this debate is now reaching regulators. It's been there for almost 2 decades now, going back and forth. It's why industry groups are arguing about it. It's why brokers are pushing back, and it's why drivers are demanding answers. So here's the question that I'm curious about for everyone. If a shipper pays $5,000 to move a load, should the driver hauling that freight be able to see that number? Or should that information remain between the shipper and the broker? Because right now the trucking industry is split right down the middle on that issue. Some drivers say transparency would level the playing field. Others say the system works fine the way it is. I want to hear from the people actually doing the job. If you're a trucker, should drivers see the real freight rate? And tell us why. Or should the system stay exactly the way it is? I want to know in the comments. Because right now, every time you're negotiating a load with a broker, you're operating blind.